definitely contact the place directly to see if they're open. And even, I mean, I contact numerous places asking what their safety measures are, because if they just say something like, oh, everything's 6 feet apart, but like no mask wearing, for example, then I'm out. So definitely contact the places. And, if you don't get a response for them, or if they seem kind of hesitant, if they're going to be open when you plan on traveling, I would say choose someplace else, because I mean, if something happens, they go under, then you've lost your money. An avid traveler. I like to call myself a travel enthusiast. I'm also the co-founder of Femscape Sojourns, which is a boutique women's travel company. I own it with my mother. And in addition to that, that's one job. In addition to that, I'm also a travel journalist. So as you mentioned, you can see my work in CNN Travel, Frommer's Travel Guides, New York Times, World Travel Magazine, and a few in-flight airline magazines and other locations. I have traveled to over 50 countries, and I've recently this year been named as 100 Most Inspiring Women Travel Founders by Travel Massive. So that was definitely an honor. And I've given numerous presentations and talks about travel.
What was the most recent destination that you visited? And when was it?
Okay, so I mean, I have been traveling during the pandemic within the United States. So I am currently in Chicago, which is not my hometown, but I'll be here for a month, so I don't know if that's really as much of a vacation. And I traveled to Ohio recently and stayed in a treehouse in the forest. But let's talk international, because I feel like it's a bit more exciting at the moment. International, my last trip was actually in March, and I was in Morocco.
How does one plan a trip wisely?
Planning a trip is definitely very stressful. And, there's many different methods on how to plan a trip, but this is how I like to plan a trip, and how I like to plan a trip in order to have the least amount of issues down the line. So first of all, research the destination you wish to travel to. And especially during this time, during COVID, and, even after COVID, you need to figure out, are they open for you to even travel to? I would love to travel to Europe, but I'm an American citizen, so that's not a place I can travel to right now. And during COVID, what is their test? If you can travel to the destination, what is their testing and quarantine policy? You may not be willing to quarantine for 2 weeks in a destination, because that's usually the length of time someone has for a vacation. Or maybe you can get a rapid test and easily go. Has the country had an increase in cases? Because maybe originally when you thought about it a few months ago, they were really low, and maybe currently they've kind of had an increase. So check that out. And just overall, in general, with COVID and without, what safety measures is the country taking, for COVID, or in general, if they're having, some type of turbulence, what safety measures are they taking? That's as far as the destination. As far as the airlines, be sure to read the airline policy fully to understand what it offers. So look for if they have change fees, fare differences, cancellation fees, and even options for airline credit, because that will help you in the long run. And pay attention to emails and text notifications, especially from the airlines. So I always highly recommend downloading the app of the airline that you're planning on flying with. So, on my phone, I have an app for Delta, for United, for American. I have apps for international airlines such as like KLM, because they constantly give you notifications, and that's kind of the easiest ways to stay up to date with what's going on with your flight. And that's during COVID and, even past COVID, that's always a great option to choose. And double check your reservation to make sure of the dates, the times, and even to make sure the airport hasn't changed. So this has happened to me personally. First, I've had an issue where I thought I chose the correct date, and I actually chose the same day a year later. So definitely double check that. And I've had issues where, for example, flying into New York, there's 2 major airports there, and the airport actually changed on me because they were having issues. I'm not really even sure what happened. So luckily I got a notification in advance, so I was able to make plans for how was I going to get to this airport instead of the one I had planned. Be sure not to wait until the day before to reconfirm your flight. That's very last minute, and you should, that will be hard to make last minute plans. This year, especially, advanced planning is not really a deal breaker. Some people, such as myself, are really bad at advanced planning because I have a lot of changes. Things come up and I'll have to change. So then I'll lose money or, whatever. But this actually is the best time for advanced booking because right now airlines are very lenient with their change fees. So might as well lock in that great deal that you see now, as long as you read all of the stipulations beforehand and yeah, go for it. And definitely build flexibility into your travel plans. So, things come up while traveling. So you don't want to stick to such a strict schedule because then it will mess up the rest of your trip if one thing goes wrong. And if you're traveling by train here in the US, right now during COVID, Amtrak now allows you to see how booked the train is through their app. So that's really great because travelers can choose accordingly. Like, I would like this train because it's only 25% full, Always make sure, if you're traveling internationally, always make sure your passport is valid for 6 months. Those are kind of ways to plan a trip during COVID and some of the same ways you can plan a trip even after COVID ends.
So let's say we have a travel herder.
Okay.
Or a newbie who never planned a trip online before.
Okay.
What to know? What websites to go to? Who is trustworthy?
So I like to, if I'm booking online, I like to kind of look at many different websites. So basically, as if I was going to a doctor, I like to get numerous opinions. So I look at many different websites to kind of compare. So I do look at Kayak, and I actually typically usually book with Kayak, but I also look at Momondo. I also look at Google. I look at the different websites that many people have had positive reviews from, and I compare them, and it really just depends. Sometimes one website is better than the other. And sometimes you might just feel more comfortable with one website because the layout of how you can see the different pricings. So for example, Momondo shows like a graph and you can see as the month progresses, what days the prices increase or decrease, Kayak, they have some days where it shows a red square while others are green, meaning cheaper or less expensive. So it's whichever you feel comfortable with. But I would definitely, make sure it's a reputable company. If it's a company you haven't heard of, do a little Google search, see has there been reviews saying it's a scam or anything like that. And that goes for not even just like booking sites, but also, airlines. If you hadn't heard of this international airline or something like that, definitely check it out. And also always be sure it's a secure website. So in the little HTML code on the top left, make sure there's a little lock. So that usually means it's not a scam, that they're just trying to get your credit card info. And then in general, look, for each site, look and see what their booking terms are, such as the cancellation policy and what's the payment and possible deposit policy. Because sometimes the sites are different than maybe the actual airline or the actual hotel. So make sure you're okay with those. And, if you're booking a flight online, check cancellation and change policies, check what their COVID measures are right now during this time. Because some airlines, are taking stronger safety measures for COVID than other airlines, such as Delta. They're blocking out the middle seat, which is very, I think that makes me feel safer when I'm traveling. And then for hotels, check out the location of the hotel, check out what the TripAdvisor reviews, leave the site that you might be booking from, check out what TripAdvisor says about them, and search for, if does this hotel have a concierge, et cetera, because sometimes these booking sites have different types of reviews than if you go to another booking site or if you go to a third-party site such as TripAdvisor and such. So you should really check out all the different reviews, do some little research, spend some time. And if you're booking a tour company online, check out what type of trips do they offer that you may want, and do you fit in with them? Who goes on their trips? Are they easily reached? If there's not a phone number for a company that you're booking for, I feel like that's very stressful. An email is fine, but a phone number will give you more of an immediate response. So check that out. Has there been reviews that people have mentioned this company keeps in touch with you from the booking stage to travel date? Because that's always great to me. I feel really comfortable when I book a trip and then I get numerous emails up until my travel date, like reminding me or giving me tips and such. And if you're looking to book with a travel company, definitely make sure you find out who's on the ground with you when you arrive. The best scenario is there's a tour company with you and local experts, but check out and see, are you just arriving and you have to get to the hotel yourself or, whatnot. So make sure you really, it's basically comes down to make sure you really do research about these different places that you're looking into and check out many different sites to find out what best is suitable for you and your type of travel.
You made a decision about destination and then you go tickets first, then hotel, then transportation, then this. Or does it kind of happen intertwinedly? How do you normally do it?
So I think the first step is the destination. So I first research and see if this destination has activities that I'm interested in. So once I for sure know it does, then I'll just do a quick search and see kind of price average of hotels to make sure they have kind of hotels that are not too luxurious and not too budget, kind of in my range of like middle. But, also if you prefer budget, make sure it has that option. If you prefer luxury, make sure it has that option. And then once I kind of do that, like just quick search, then that's when I get to booking the flight. So I usually do choose destination, and then book flight, then book hotel, and then do activities from there. Transportation is actually, I do transportation then activities because I need to make sure I can get to the hotel from the airport. But usually once I book the hotel, it's kind of a mix of transportation and activities because I can also contact the hotel and ask them for their advice on how to get, if they offer transportation, if they have a concierge for activities. So destination, flight, hotel, transportation, activities.
Okay, on an average, and let's talk not just the COVID, because obviously now the times are a little bit unstable.
Right.
On an average, let's say you want to go to a point B or point A, how long would the whole process of booking a trip online take you?
I would say it probably takes me about 10 days. It takes me about 10 days. So it takes me probably 3 days just to do my research. And then after I do my research, then I'll book the flight. And then it probably takes me about 2 days to find a hotel. And then the rest of the time I'm figuring out activities and transportation. So I would say a week to 10 days.
Have you had, and what kind of an unexpected situation, completely unexpected, during one of your travels? And how did you find your way out of it?
Oh my gosh, I have so many to choose from. Some are good, some maybe are not so good, but at the end of the day, now that it's over, it's kind of funny looking back at. So in 2010, actually, I was in Tanzania. I was filming a documentary. And I don't know if you remember, but a volcano erupted in Iceland that year. It was huge. It was all over the news. A lot of flights were held up because of it. Yeah. So actually all flights out of Tanzania were also canceled due to the volcano, and they were canceled for 2 weeks. So I was essentially stranded in the country. Like I couldn't go anywhere. But it turned out to be fun. At the time I was in school, so I was missing school. So obviously loved that. But I also was able to stay in the hotel with other stranded foreigners. So we kind of made the most out of our time, like we would all gather in the lobby. We would form like little groups to go on trips. So I actually made a lot of new friends that way. And, but the entire time we were prepared in case any flights opened, we had everything packed and ready. Yeah. So, we found out one morning, they told us, they were like, we have a flight for you guys. You need to be ready within 6 hours, but we were all already packed. It was like, we were just living out of a bag basically at that time, just so that at any point we could just get the bag, get our passport and go. So that was kind of that was a really interesting time. But I've also been like in Taiwan, and there was tension with China. And so the entire country went under lockdown for 24 hours. So we were not allowed to leave our hotel. All windows, all curtains had to be closed. Lights have to be turned off, which obviously it's, especially if you haven't traveled and been in a situation, can be scary, but we stayed calm and we stayed inside, and within 24 hours it was over. And we also chatted with other people in the hotel. So you really have to make the most out of a lot of situations that you're in, and stay calm.
Going back to what you suggested regarding plan wisely, think about safety, security, what's open, what's closed, and all that. Places like Tanzania and, let's say, Africa or other African countries, or, some islands.
Yeah.
What about vaccination? Have you had to have it? How long in advance do you do it? Where do you find what you need for this type of countries? Just maybe a little bit of an excursus into that.
Okay. Yes, actually, my first country that I ever traveled to that I had to get vaccinated for was I went to Tanzania, Kenya, and Madagascar all together in one trip. And so that was in 2010, so it was a while ago, but I would say I got about 5 to 6 vaccinations. And I also had to take malaria pills. So, but I think now there's a vaccine for malaria. But so that's something you definitely should plan. So when you're researching your destination, check out the vaccination policy, and what vaccines you may need, because you may not want to travel to a destination if you need vaccines, or you may be too late in the game. Like if you're planning on traveling the next week, usually if you need these vaccines, because some vaccines, they want you to take it like malaria pills. I'm pretty sure you have to start taking it at least 2 weeks in advance. So that could maybe stop you from even traveling to that destination because you haven't started taking it. I do recommend taking the vaccines that they recommend because, these are destinations that, maybe the locals have been exposed to this, so their body is able to handle these type of viruses or, bacteria. But if you're from a first world country or a more developed country, then we may not be able to handle that. So usually most places have, what are they called? I think they're called like passport clinics, and they specifically focus on vaccinations for traveling. But also you could contact your primary care physician, and they may be able to give some of the vaccines or recommend a place for you, because I do know the travel clinics can be pretty pricey. So you might want to first contact your local physician. But yeah, if you're planning on traveling to, various places in Africa, I think maybe some places in South America, even in Asia, you probably should plan in advance because you will need to have some vaccines or pills kind of a few weeks out.
Basically, here is a standard situation for a best consumer who posted a review on our site. He or she books a hotel or a flight or the whole trip online or with an agent, whatever. Mm-hmm. Plans to go, cancels because of the pandemic.
Right.
Wants to get a refund, cannot get a refund. Do you have any maybe suggestions? Maybe of some loopholes, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Maybe some kind of way to handle this better, to avoid the emotional distress and to get, at least some money eventually.
Right. Yeah, this is a very tricky question. And yeah, it's happening to so many people right now during COVID, especially. And there's not really one answer for everyone because it really depends on who they booked with and what company. But I would say definitely first off, contact your travel insurance. And I'm hoping that people did purchase travel insurance or have travel insurance. So first I'll speak to people who have. First, contact your travel insurance, see what their policy is when it comes to COVID. Every insurance is different, but I have heard about some insurance companies who have been able to really help people get a lot of money back or at least get some type of credit back for their trips. So I would say, number one, first contact your travel insurance. Even if you book through an online travel agency, try actually contacting directly the airline. Even though you didn't book directly with the airline, try contacting them because there have been some airlines who have given credit even though you booked with like an OTA. So do that. It's so much more difficult with an OTA because there are so many more people involved. That's why I suggest going straight to the airline or straight to the hotel, instead of going through the online travel agency. So contact each individual company if you're able to try to receive some type of refund. And then if you can't, everyone's first instinct is be furious, to start yelling on the phone, to demand exactly. And I know it's hard. Obviously, losing money is hard, but so many people are going through this, and you have to also understand, some of these companies, especially if they're small businesses and such, I mean, they're also losing money. So it's hard for them to also give you a refund and stuff. And so obviously that's hard to take in mentally, but ask for other options, kind of give some leeway, ask for other options, such as maybe they can give you a credit. Maybe they can, give you the same amount of days in the hotel or the same airline flight next year, or, whenever you are able to travel again. Ask for a voucher and such. And bottom line really is always read the fine print before booking, and contact the company before booking if you have any questions or are hesitant. So obviously no one was expecting COVID or any type of virus like this, but now that we've experienced it, I think moving forward, that's something people are going to ask about. Like, okay, if a virus happens, what's your policy? What type of refund and such? And you should ask that about everything, or if you don't want to ask, you should at least read the fine print to make sure it covers everything that could possibly happen on your trip.
Would you say that it's okay, it's safe to travel right now? And what are the safe destinations for traveling, in your personal opinion?
So I think traveling right now, it really depends on the traveler. If you're a traveler that is able to adhere to policies, then I say travel. If you're taking precautions at home, then you are probably able to take precautions while you travel. If you're someone who gets very frustrated by wearing a mask or having to adhere to some of these policies, and you're traveling because you want to get away from it, you probably should not travel, because you're not getting away from it. There's nowhere to get away from it, and you're just endangering yourself and others. And you're probably in the long run going to be very frustrated, especially if you travel and encounter people who, force you to adhere to policies. So, we've really seen businesses step up to the plate, such as lowering the occupancy, on flights or on trains or in hotels, increasing their cleaning standards, constantly sanitizing. I know Hilton hotels, they're putting a sticker on the door to show that no one, a sticker from the door to the wall, showing that no one has broken this seal. Basically, seal is the word I'm looking for. So travelers must really adhere to these policies, and they must realize this is not a negotiable, nor is it a political situation. This is for the safety of everyone. And so, if you plan on taking all safety measures, I recommend traveling. Why not? If you can handle wearing a mask at all times, if you plan on sanitizing, hand washing, and are able to refrain from touching your face, yes, travel. If you have issues with any of these or get annoyed by any of these, do not travel. And to me, the safest directions as far as traveling, flying, if you're flying within the United States, I recommend Delta. They block out middle seats. They have kicked out so many people for not wearing a mask. I have flown Delta during the pandemic, and I can say I felt extremely safe. Actually, I felt like that was my lowest risk location of contracting COVID. But obviously, the safest way to go is road tripping. Taking your own car, traveling to outdoor destinations. That way, you're bringing your own food, or maybe only eating outside. And if you need to, you can choose and stay in COVID selected hotels. So there are hotels, like I mentioned, Hilton earlier, but there are other hotels that are really enhancing their cleaning standards. If you're staying in an Airbnb, there's some places that the ones that are following precautions, they have a little label that says enhanced COVID cleaning standards. So that's an option. And, traveling with people in your bubble, that's also the safest way to travel. If you formed a bubble during COVID, that's great. The bottom line is travel smart and be mindful of others, but I don't think that there is a reason not to travel if you're following all precautions.
What are the traveling trends, or what will be, in your opinion, the traveling trends for 2021?
So I think that travel will definitely change, but it doesn't really have to be a bad thing. I think that there will be a huge focus on road trips and more like adventure travel. people will be really mindful of space. There'll be a lot of weekend getaways, so shorter trips. People will still be kind of adjusting to traveling in general. National parks will also be really popular, and these can also be for financial reasons as well, due to obviously a lot of people have lost jobs and such. I do think that there will be an increase in private jet flights, just because people will feel more safe that they're flying alone or with their family. Obviously, for some of us, we can't afford it, but I think that a lot of flights will maintain their sanitization standards, like moving forward, a lot more than they did pre-COVID. I think there'll be kind of a revival with the travel agents versus online travel agencies due to having issues getting refunds. Speaking directly to a travel agent will be easier than, booking through an online travel agency, like an OTA. I think cruise lines will probably expand medical facilities on board since they're kind of harder to quickly get off the cruise and move somewhere. I think hotels may kind of open for partial day use as well, to kind of promote a staycation, but also like in need of boosting their income, they might open for partial day use. And I think a lot more technology will be used. So like touchless devices, right now you're seeing in restaurants, you scan the barcode instead of touch a menu. Hotels will probably be something around the same thing. We'll do similar things. I think there'll be a lot of eco-friendly options. And I think the people who are going to travel are going to be millennials and Gen Z. I think they're going to be the very first people to travel, because I think the older generation are a bit more precautious about it, which is not a bad thing. So I think you'll see those people traveling first. And I really think airline travel will take about 2 to 4 years to recover. I actually read a statistic recently that said 58% of travelers said they would restrict their traveling to domestic trips. And I think people will be really budget conscious. So they might look more to staying at like bed and breakfasts or campgrounds or even all inclusive. So it's like one big package. And I think as far as bookings, I think some people right now will book in advance because there's, free change fees, etc. But I think maybe moving forward, I think after COVID, I think people may decide to book like last minute, such as 1 week in advance, maybe because they are worried about the policies or like what may happen. So they may just book last minute so that, they know, a virus is not happening right now, I think it could go really either way with that. We'll just have to see how that works. I think within the US, I think national parks and, outdoor places will become popular, but internationally, I really think destinations such as Costa Rica, Sri Lanka, I think these are places that are also outdoor destinations that offer a lot of space, like, wildlife and such. I think those will become very popular. People, of course, I don't really know, but this is kind of where it's trending right now. People are kind of seeming to want to avoid like touristy hotspot cities. So most people love to travel to Europe in the summer. I think that won't be as much of an increase because that's a large group of people gathered in one place, and I think people will still be a little wary for a few years. So I think it's going to be kind of the more places that you hear about that are very like eco-conscious, outdoors, like, stay in this eco lodge in Guatemala and such. So I think maybe Central South America as well as parts of Asia, which I think people will also be kind of wary of Asia as well, but it really just depends on the traveler.
Latifah, thank you very much again for the interview.
But thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed